On November 14th, 1998, the members of a tectonic theater project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming, and conducted interviews with people of the town. During the next year, we would return to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you are about to see is edited from those interviews, as well as from journal entries by the members of the company and other found texts. My first interview was with Reggie Fluidy of the Laramie Police Department.
I was born and raised here. My family is a third generation. My grandparents moved here in the early 1900s. Quite a while. It's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. You see, all the towns in southern Wyoming are laid and spaced out because the railroad came through. It was as far as they had to go before they had to refuel and rewater. And Laramie was a major stopping point. That's why the towns are spaced so far apart. We're one of the largest states in the country and the least populated.
There's so much space between people and towns here, so much time for reflection. You have a chance to be happy in your life here. I found that people here were nicer than in the Midwest where I used to teach because they were happier. They were glad the sun was shining, and it shines a lot here.
What you have is you have your old-time traditional rancher type. They've been here forever. And Laramie's been a hub for where they get their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is one thing all of our ancestors taught us. If you don't take care of your land, then you ruin it and you lose your living. So first, take care of your land. Then do everything you can to improve it.
I love it here. You couldn't put me back in that mess out there back east. Best thing about it is the climate, the cold, the wind. They say the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but you know what? It don't bother me. Okay, well, some of the times it bothers me, but most times it don't.
I moved here from Texas. Now in Laramie, if you don't know a person, you probably know someone that they know, so it can only be 1 degree removed at most. And for me, I love it. I love going to the grocery store and getting to visit with 4 or 5 or 6 people every time I go.
I like the trains too. They don't bother me. Okay, well, some of the times they bother me, but most times they don't. Even though one goes by every 13 minutes out where I live. They used to carry cattle, them trains. Now all they carry is diapers and cars.
It's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now, when that incident happened here with that boy, a lot of press people came up here. And one time some of them followed me up to the crime scene. And it was just a beautiful day, absolutely gorgeous. The sky was that blue, kind of blue that you'll never be able to paint. Just sky blue, and the mountains have a little bit of snow in them. And well, this reporter lady person that was up there, she came up to me and she said, well, who found the boy who was up here anyway? And I said, well, this is a really popular place for people to run. Mountain biking's really big up here, horseback riding. And well, it's just really close to town. And she looked at me and she said, who in the hell would want to run up here? And I'm just thinking, lady, you're missing the point. All you got to do is turn around, look at the mountains, smell the fresh air, just listen to the birds, and just take in what's around you. And they were just nothing but the story. I didn't feel judged. I felt that they were stupid. They're missing the point. They're missing the whole point.
Moises called, saying he had an idea for his next theater project, but there was some somberness to his voice, so I asked him what it was all about, and he told me he wanted to do a piece on what happened in Wyoming. Lee told me the company was thinking about going out to Laramie to conduct interviews, and they wanted me to come, but I'm hesitant and I have no real interest into prying into a town's unraveling.
I've never done anything like this in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask? The company has agreed that we should go to Laramie for a week and interview people. I'm a bit afraid of taking 10 people on a trip of this nature, so must make safety rules. No one works alone, and everyone carries cell phones. I made contacts with Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department in the University of Wyoming, and she's going to be hosting a party for us, our first night in Wyoming. And she promised to introduce us to some possible interviewees.
I must tell you that when I first heard you were coming here, when you first called me, I wanted to say, you've just kicked me in the stomach. Why are you doing this to me? But then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me. And more importantly, we've had so much negative closure on the whole thing, and the students really need to talk. When this all happened, they started talking about it, but then the media descended and all the dialogue stopped. You know, I really love my students because they are free thinkers. You may not like their opinions and you may not like what they have to say, but they are honest and they are truthful. So there's an excitement here. There's a dynamic here I never had with my students in the Midwest or North Dakota, because there was so much Puritanism that dictated how people saw the world, that most of the time they didn't have an opinion or you couldn't get them to express an opinion. And quite frankly, I'd rather have opinions I don't like and have that dynamic in education. There's a student I think you should talk to. Her name is Zubaida Ullah.
I lived in Wyoming my whole life, but my family's from Bangladesh. Now, when it came time to go to college, my parents couldn't afford to send me to college. I wanted to study theater, and I knew that if I was going to go to college, I was going to have to get on a scholarship. And so they have this competition each year, this Wyoming State High School competition. And I knew that if I didn't take first place in duets, that I wasn't going to get a scholarship. So I went to the theater department of the university looking for good scenes. And I asked one of the professors, I was like, I need a killer scene. And he was like, here you go, this is it. And it was from Angels in America. So I read it and I knew that I could win best scene if I did a good enough job. And when the time came, I told my mom and dad so that they would come to the competition. Now, you have to understand, my parents go to everything I've ever done. And they brought me into their room and they told me that if I did that scene, that they would not come to see me in the competition because they believe that it's wrong, that homosexuality is wrong. They felt so strongly about it that they didn't want to come see their daughter do probably the most important thing she'd ever done to that point in her life. And I didn't know what to do. I had never, ever gone against my parents' wishes. So I was kind of worried about it, but I decided to do it. And all I can remember about the competition is that when we were done, me and my scene partner, we came up to each other and we shook hands and there was a standing ovation. Oh man, it was amazing. And we took first place and we won. And that's how come I can afford to be here at the university, because of that scene. It was one of the best moments of my life. And my parents weren't there. And to this day, that was the one thing my parents didn't see me do. And thinking back on it, I think, why did I do it? Why did I oppose my parents? Because I'm not gay, so why did I do it? And I guess the only honest answer I can give is that, well, I wanted to win. It was such a good scene. It was like the best scene.
We arrived today in the Denver airport and drove to Laramie. The moment we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was strange that the Wyoming sign said
Wyoming, like no place on earth.
instead of.
Wyoming, like no place else on earth. I stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat, and the waitress said to me, "Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and Debbie Reynolds was big then. So yes, there are a lot of us around, but I promise I won't slap your elbows if you leave them on the table."
Today, the company tried to explain to me to no avail what chicken fried steak was.
We arrived in Laramie tonight, just past the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was Walmart. In the dark, we could have been on any main drag in America, fast food chains, gas stations. But as we drove into the downtown area by the railroad tracks, the buildings still looked like a turn of the century Western town. Oh, and as we passed by the University Inn, the sign where amenities such as cable TV and heated pool are usually touted, it said hate is not a Laramie value.
I met today with a longtime Laramie resident, Marge Murray, a social service worker who taught me a thing or two.
Well, what Laramie was like when I was growing up. Well, it was mostly rural. I enjoyed it, you know. My kids all had horses. There was more land then, you know. You could have your horses, your pet cows, your little chickens, your own little bit of acreage. And I could run around the house in all my togethers while the kids were at school. And nobody saw me. Well, if they got that close. That was their problem.
I just want to make sure I got this expression right. In your all togethers?
Well, yeah, honey. Why would you wear clothes? Oh gosh, how's he going to use that in this play?
So this was a big ranching town, right?
Oh no, not just ranching. It was a huge railroad town at one time. Well, you know, that was before they moved everything to Cheyenne, Green River, and Omaha. Now it's just a drive-through spot for the railroad. What was it? In the 50s, I think? They had a roundhouse where you could build a complete engine. My mom worked there.
Your mom worked in a roundhouse?
Yep, she washed engines. Her name was Minnie. We used to sing that one song for her. You know that one song.
I'm sorry, what song?
Oh, run for the roundhouse, Minnie. They can't corner you there. You know, I'll tell you though, Wyoming is bad in terms of jobs. I mean, the university has the big high whoop-de-doo jobs, but in Wyoming, unless you're a professional, well, most of the people are working minimum wage jobs. I've either been in the service industry or bartending most of my life. Now I pretty much know everyone in town. But here in Laramie, there's a difference, and there always has been. See, what it is class distinction, about the ones that are educated and the ones that aren't educated. The ones that are educated don't understand why the ones that aren't don't get educated. That's why I told you, my kids had to fight because their mother was a bartender. Never mind, I was the damn best bartender in town. That's not bragging, that's just a fact. But here in Laramie, if it weren't for the university, we'd just all be SOL.
What's a SOL?
Do I have to say it? Well, it's shit out of luck. Oh lordy, now you've got that on your tape. Boy, you are getting an education today.
Yeah, I guess I am. So let me ask you, what was your response when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I've been close enough to the case to know many people. I have a sister on the sheriff's department. And as far as the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or another as long as they don't bother me. And if they did, I just say no thank you. And that's the attitude of most people in the Laramie population. They might smack one, you know, if they were in a bar situation, poke one around if they'd been drinking, but most of them would just say, I don't swing that way, and whistle on about their business. Laramie is live and let live. So where are you going with this story anyway?
Oh, well, we still haven't decided yet, but when we're done, we're going to try and bring it around to Laramie.
All right, then there are things I won't tell you.
So, on the 2nd of October, I get a phone call at about 10 after 7. It was Matthew Shepard, and he said to me, can you pick me up at the corner of 3rd and Grand? So, anyhow, I pull up to the corner to see who Matthew Shepard, you know? It's a little guy about 5'2", soaking wet. I bet you 97 pounds tops. They say he weighed 110 in the newspaper. I wouldn't believe it. They also said he was 5'5" in the newspaper, but this man, he was really only about 5'2", maybe 5'1". So, he walks up to the window. Okay, I'm going to try and go in steps so you can better understand the principle of this man. So, he walks up to the window, and I say, are you Matthew Shepard? And he says, yeah, I'm Matthew Shepard, but I don't want you to call me Matthew or Mr. Shepard. I don't want you to call me anything. My name is Matt, and I want you to know I am gay, and we are going to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that? And well, I say, how are you paying? Because, well, the fact is, Laramie doesn't have any gay bars. And for that matter, neither does Wyoming. So he was asking me to take him to Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour away. Okay, Matt was a blunt little shit. You know what I'm saying? He always was. But I liked him because he was straightforward. You see what I'm saying? Maybe gay, but straightforward. You see what I'm saying?
We never actually called him Matthew. Most of the time we just called him Choo Choo. You know, because we used to call him Matchu, and then we just started calling him Choo Choo. And whenever I think of Matthew, I always think of his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he'd just walk into a room and he'd be like, to everybody. He just made you feel great. And he would like stare people down in the coffee shop because he always wanted to sit on that end seat so that he could talk to me while I was working. And if someone was in that seat, he'd sit there and stare at them until they left. And then he would claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. I mean, that's all his big interest was watching CNN and MSNBC. I mean, those are the only TV channels I ever saw his TV tune into. He was just really smart in political affairs. But not too smart on, like, common sense things. So, he moved to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in, to the point of being somewhat mousy, I'd almost say. He was having some difficulties adjusting, but this was home for him, and he made that quite clear. So his mousiness, his shyness gave way to a person who was excited about this track they were going to embark on. He was just figuring out wanting to work on human rights and how he was going to do that. And when that happens, this person begins to bloom a little bit. They see, wow, there are opportunities here. I can do something with my life. And in retrospect, and I can only say this in retrospect, of course, I think that's where he was heading, towards human rights, which only adds to the irony and tragedy of this.
I did hear from Matthew about 48 hours before his attack, and he told me that he had joined the gay and lesbian group on campus, and he said he was enjoying it. You know, he was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. Yeah, he was really stoked about being there.
Let me tell you something else here. There's more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know that for a fact. They're not particularly, what do you call them? The, queens, gay people, queens, run around, those types of people. No, they're the types of people who throw bale, hay, jump on horses, brand them, and kick gas. You see what I'm saying? And I always say, don't fuck with the Wyoming queer, because they will kick you in your fucking ass. But again, that's not the point of what I'm trying to say. Because I know a lot of gay people in Wyoming. I know a lot of people, period. I've been lived up here some 40 odd years, you see what I'm saying? And I don't think Wyoming people give a damn one way or another if you're gay or straight. That's just what I said. It doesn't matter. Now, let me put it to you this way. If there's 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, which is often the case, now you stop and think for a minute. Who's getting what? Yeah, you see what I'm saying? It's like, Jesus, it doesn't take a big intelligent mind to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first came here is that I was the first out lesbian or gay faculty member on campus. And that was in 1992, so not that long ago. I was asked in my interview what my husband did, and so I came out then. Do you want a funny story? When you first get here as a new faculty member, there's all these things you have to do. So, one day I was in my office and I noticed that this woman called. I was expecting, it was a health insurance phone call or something like that, so I called her back, and I could hear her. She's working on her keyboard, clicking away, and I said, this is Kathy Connolly returning her phone call. And she says, oh, it's you. And I thought, this is bizarre. And she says, I hear you're gay. I hear you are. And I was like, uh-huh. And she says, I heard you came as a couple. I'm one too. Not a couple, just a person. And so she was a kind of lesbian who knew I was coming and wanted to come over and meet me immediately. And later she told me that there were other lesbians that she knew in town that wouldn't be seen with me. That I would irreparably taint them. That just to be seen with me could be a problem. And I knew that it was going to be hard as a gay woman. But I kept telling myself, people should live where they want to live. And there'd be times where I'd go down to gay bars in Denver and people would ask me where I was from and I'd say, Laramie, Wyoming. And I met so many women down there from Wyoming. So many gay women who grew up here and they're just like, I don't know how you can live there. I had to get out. But every once in a while, there'd be a girl. Oh gosh, I miss Laramie. I mean, I really love it there. That's where I want to live. They get this starry-eyed look and I'm just like, if that's where you want to live, do it. I mean, imagine if more gay people stayed in small towns.
My dear brothers and sisters, I'm here today to bring to you the word of the Lord. Now, I have a simple truth that I tell my colleagues, and I'm going to tell it to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Scientists tell me that human history, that the world is 5 billion or 6 billion years old. After all, what's a billion years, give or take? But the Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
The sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen Med Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions. Baptist, Mormon, they're everywhere. It's not just Salt Lake, they're all over. They're like jam on toast down here.
The Mormon church has a little different thing going on that irritates some folks. Earlier, I was speaking with Doug Laws, the state ecclesiastical leader for the Mormon church, and he said they absolutely believe that God still speaks to man. They don't think that it happened and then some folks wrote it in the Bible. He said God still speaks to us today, and they believe that. They believe that the prophet of the church has the authority to receive revelation and inspiration from God.
So the spectrum would be to the left side of the panel. So far left, that is probably me sitting by myself and the Unitarian Church. Unitarians are a large form of humanicists. I mean, we're not even sure we're a religion. And to the right of the spectrum, to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest, who is well established here, and God bless him. He didn't equivocate at all when this happened. He held the vigil for Matthew that night.
I was really jolted because, when we did the vigil, we wanted to get other ministers involved, and we called some of them, and they were not going to get involved. And it was like, we are going to stand back and wait and see which way the wind is blowing. And that angered me immensely. We are supposed to stand out as leaders. I thought, wow, what's going on here?
According to the Mormons, God has set boundaries, and one of our responsibilities is to learn. They ask, what is it that God wants? So they study scripture and look to their leaders. And then they know what the bounds are. And once you kind of know what the bounds are, then you get a sort of feel for what's out of bounds. There was a proclamation that came out on the family in the Mormon church saying a family is defined as one woman and one man and children. To them, that's a family, and that's about as clearly as you can state it. There's no sexual deviation in the Mormon church, no leniency. They just think it's out of bounds. I warn them, they will be mocked. They'll be ridiculed for the singularity of their faith. But you let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It's all in there.
Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Catholic conservatives use the Bible to show the rest of the world what it says here in the Bible. And they believe, and they do, that the Bible is the Word of God. How are you going to fight that?
I am a biblicist, which means the Bible doesn't need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived in Laramie on September 15th. I toured around, tumbleweed, cement factory, and asked myself, what the hell am I doing in Wyoming? 3 weeks later, I found out what the hell I was doing in Wyoming.
Hello?
Yes, hello. My name is Amanda Gronich. I'm here in Laramie with the theater company. I went to the Reverend's, your husband's church on Sunday, and I was extremely interested to hear his thoughts on the current events.
Well, I don't think he really wants to talk to you. He has very biblical views on homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence, that kind of lifestyle, you know. And he was just bombarded with the press when all of this happened, and the media has just been terrible about this whole thing.
Oh, I know. I really understand. It must have been just terrible.
Yes, I think we're all just hoping this just goes away.
Well, do you think maybe I could call back and speak to him later, just briefly?
Well, all right. You can call him back at like 9 o'clock.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll do that.
Today, Barbara and I went to the Fireside Bar, which was the last place Matthew was seen in public.
Fireside definitely feels like a college bar with a couple of pool tables and a stage for karaoke night. Still, the few regulars were hardly the college crowd.
The first person we talked to was Madison Galloway, the owner.
My great-great-grandfather moved here in 1862 and owned Laramie's first opera house. He called it Old Blue Front. And in 1870, Louise Grandma Swain cast the first women's ballot in any free election in the world. And that's why Wyoming is the quality state. And what I want to do is reestablish my bar business as Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium. You know, I want to have a restaurant. I want to have a gift shop. I want to have a pool hall and do all that shit, you know? Every night's ladies' night. And so the Fireside is the first step to creating the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium.
So what about the night Matthew Shepard was here?
We had karaoke that night. 20 or 30 people here. Matthew Shepard came in, sitting at the end of the bar. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to go through this entire thing again. I'm just going to make this quick and brief. Just tell you the facts. Here we go. 10 o'clock, I clock in because we're short on staff, so I have to work the bar. And it's a Tuesday night. 10:30, Matthew comes in, and he's alone. He sits down, and he orders a Heineken. And what can I tell you about Matt? If you had 100 customers like him in a bar, it'd be the most perfect bar, all right? And nothing to do with sexual orientation. Just absolute mannerism, manners, politeness, intellect. It's just, and he took care of me as in tips, and, you know, just had everything from conversation to dress nicely, had a clean cut. And, you know, some people you just know, just sits down, says please, thank you, and offers intellect within their vocabulary. So he kicks it there. Didn't seem to have any worries in the world, wasn't looking for anyone, just enjoying his time alone and the people around him. Now, approximately 11:45, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson walk in. And I didn't know their names at the time, but they're the accused. They're the perps. They are the accused. All right. They walked in very dirty and grungy, just stone-faced, you know, the rude, the gimme type, that kind of thing. And as you know, they bought a pitcher with just dimes and quarters. Now, as a bartender, you don't forget that kind of thing. I mean, paying for a $5.50 pitcher in just dimes and quarters, that's a freaking nightmare, all right? Now, Henson and McKinney, they didn't seem intoxicated in any way. They came in, just ordered the beer, and took it back to the pool hall with them.
Money meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it. And he would hand over his wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. They can say it was robbery. I don't buy it for even an iota of a second.
Then, a few moments later, I looked over and Aaron and Russell had been talking to Matthew Shepard.
Aaron told me that a guy walked up to him and then told him that he was gay and that he was trying to get with Aaron and Russ, and he got aggravated with it. And, he told him he was straight and that he didn't want anything to do with him. And he said that that's when he and Russ went to the bathroom so that they could decide to pretend that they were gay so they could get it.
Okay, no. Okay, they stated that Matt approached them, that he came on to them. Okay, I absolutely positively disbelieve and refute that statement 100%. I refute it. And I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. 1, characteristics. Why would he approach them? Why them? He wasn't approaching anyone else in the bar. And they say he's gay, he's a flaming hot gay, and he's going to do that to people? Yeah, bullshit. I don't believe that one bit, all right? And 2, territorialism is the word I'll use for this, okay? And that's a fact that Matt was sitting there. And during that time, Aaron and Russell were in the pool room. And upon their first interaction, they had been in Matt's area, the area that Matt had been seeing the entire night. So who approached who by that?
But Matthew is the kind of person, he would never not talk to anyone for any reason. If someone were to go up to him and start talking, he'd be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He never had a problem talking to anybody. But Matt was lonely a lot of times. Me knowing that, and knowing how gullible he could be, he would have walked right into it. Him being alone that night at the bar made him that much more vulnerable.
So the only thing is, and this is what I'm testifying to because I'm basically a key eyewitness in this case. Basically what I'm testifying to is that I saw Matthew leave. I saw 2 individuals leave with Matthew. I didn't see their faces, but I saw the back of their heads. In the same time, Aaron and Russell were nowhere to be around. You do the math.
The fence. I've been out there 4 times and taken visitors. Clearly, it's a very personal and powerful experience to go out there. It's dark and empty, and you can't help but think how Matthew was out there for nearly 18 hours in freezing temperatures. The view is isolated. God, oh God, why have you forsaketh me comes to mind.
Greg was crying on the way back. I couldn't bring myself to tears, but I felt the same way. I have an interview later with Aaron Kreifels. He's the boy who found Matthew out there on the fence. I don't think I'm up for it, though. I'll see if somebody else can do it.
I took off on my bicycle around 5 p.m. from my dorm on Wednesday. I just kind of felt like going for a ride, so I went to the top of Cactus Canyon, and I'm not super familiar with that area, so on my way back, I was just sort of, choosing the way as I was going, because there was no way I was just gonna go that way, and now it just makes me think that God wanted me to find him, because there was no way I was just gonna go that way. Anyway, I was in some deep ass sand and I wanted to turn around, but I kept going. And there was this rock on the ground and I just drilled it. I went right over the handlebars and ended up on the ground. Anyway, so I just, got up and was sort of dusting myself off when I noticed something, which ended up to be Matt. He was just lying there by the fence and well, I just thought it was a scarecrow. I was like, Halloween's coming up. It's probably just some Halloween gag. So I got my bike and walked it over to the fence that was there. It was a buck-type fence, and as I got closer, I noticed his hair, which was a major key for me to realizing it was a human being, was his hair. I just thought it was a dummy. Seriously, I even noticed the chest going up and down, but I just thought it was some sort of mechanism. But once I saw his hair, I knew it was a human. So I ran. I ran as fast as I could, and I called the police. If there was anything I could have done, I would have done it to help him, but there was nothing I could do. I kept yelling at him like, "Hey, hello, wake up!" But he didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't anything.
When I got there, at first, the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet. So I got in my vehicle and raced over. I seen what appeared to be a young gentleman, 13, 14 years old, because he was so tiny. He was laying on his back and was tied to the bottom end of a pole. I did the best I could. The young man on the ground, Matthew Shepard, was covered in dry blood on his head, and there was dry blood underneath him, and he was barely breathing. He was doing the best he could. I was going to try and breathe for him, but I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. He was covered in, like I said, partially dry blood and blood on his head. The only place where he didn't have blood on him, on his face, was where he had appeared to be crying down his face. His head was distorted. It did not look normal. He looked as if he had a real harsh head wound.
I was working in the emergency room the night Matthew Shepard was brought in. I don't think that any of us can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a long time. Those of us who'd worked in big city hospitals have seen this, but we have some people here who haven't worked in a big city hospital, and it's not something you expect here. You expect to see this kind of injury from a car going down a hill at 80 miles an hour. You expect to see gross injuries from something like that. This horrendous, terrible thing. But you don't expect to see that from someone doing this to another person. The ambulance report said it was a beating, so we knew.
His hands were tied, thumbs out, in what we call a cuffing position, the way we handcuff people. He was bound with a real thin white rope. He was tied to the bottom end of a pole about
4 inches up off the ground. His shoes were missing. He was tied extremely tight, so I used my boot knife to try and slip it between the rope and his wrist. I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Your first thought is, well, certainly you'd like to think that it's somebody from out of town that comes through and beats somebody. I mean, things like this happen, shit happens, and it happens in Laramie. But if there's been someone who's been beaten repeatedly, this is certainly something that offends us. I think that's a good word for it. It offends us.
He was bound so tight. And when I finally got my knife through there, I'm sorry. We rolled him on his left side, and when we did that, he quit breathing. So immediately I rolled him back on his back, and that was just enough an adjustment for me to cut him free from there. I seen the EMS trying to get to the location. Once the ambulance arrived, we put him in a backboard and scooted him from underneath the fence. We put him in a neck collar, and then Rob drove him to Envision's hospital emergency room.
Now, the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew came in, Aaron McKinney was brought in by his girlfriend. Now, I guess he had gotten into a fight later on that night back in town, so I'm working on Aaron, and the ambulance comes in with Matthew. Now, at this point, I don't know that there's a connection at all. So I tell Aaron to wait, and I go treat Matthew. So there's Aaron in one room of the ER, and Matthew in another room 2 doors down. Then 2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. They were 2 kids. They were both my patients, and they were 2 kids. I took care of both of them, of both their bodies, and for a brief moment, I wondered if this is how God feels when he looks down at us, how we are all his kids, our bodies, our souls. And I felt a great deal of compassion for both of them.
They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew. I would have never recognized him.
Well, the news reports started trickling out on Thursday, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of this crime was not mentioned. All that was mentioned was that there was a man, a Laramie man, found beaten out on the prairie, basically. And later on in the evening, they mentioned his name. It was like, that's not the Matthew Shepard I know. That's not my student. That's not the person I've been meeting with. And the news reports kept rolling in. Young University of Wyoming student, his age, his description. It's like, oh my God. By this time, I was starting to get upset, but still the severity wasn't out yet.
I was in the coffee shop, and someone pulled me aside and said, "I don't know much, but they say there's been a young man who's been beaten in Laramie." And they said his name was Matthew Shepard. And then they asked me, "Do you think this could be our Matthew?" And I was like, well, yeah. It sounds like it could be our Matthew. So then I got home and I called up my sister Trish. And I'm like, "Tell me what you know." I'm just like, I need to know anything you know because I don't know anything. So then I got home that night, and that's when the whole story came up on the Channel 5 news, and it was just like, ba-boom. And I just felt sick to my stomach. Just instantly sick to my stomach. Yes. It was Matthew. It was my friend.
Well, I'll tell you what's overwhelming. Friday morning, that's when I first found out about it. I walked to class, and as soon as I get out of it, boom, there it is, in the branding iron. So immediately, I drive to the nearest newsstand, buy myself a paper because I want more details. Buy that and drive home, and before I can even open the damn paper, my boss calls me. And he says, "Did you hear about what happened?" And I'm like, yeah, I heard. So then he says, "Was he in the bar Tuesday night?" And I reply, yeah. Yes, he was. So then he immediately says, "You've got to get down here. We've got to figure out what's going on. We've got to figure out what's going to go down."
It was Thursday afternoon. I got a call. We just got a kid in from Wyoming, and it looks like he may be a victim of a hate crime. We have a couple of newspaper reporters here asking questions, and so we agreed that we needed one spokesperson. As a doctor who worked on Matthew, I'll do that.
Our focus today turns to Laramie, Wyoming, and the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being charged for the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday, right around lunchtime. And I said, "I'm just going. I just took off. It's just down the street." So I walked a few blocks and I went. Has anybody told you about the arraignment? There were probably a couple hundred people from out of town and probably just as many news media. By that point, a lot more of the details had come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids themselves, local kids, that everyone who's from around here has some relationship to, and what Everyone was, I really think, waiting on pins and needles for what would happen when the perpetrators walked in. And what happened, there's 200 people in the room at this point. They walked in their complete orange jumpsuits and their shackles, and you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, lots of people were teary at that point. Then the judge came in and did a reading. There was a reading of the evidence that the prosecution has, and it's just a statement of facts. And the reading of the facts was, the essential facts are that the defendants, Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson, met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar. And after Mr. Shepard confided he was gay, the subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into leaving with them in their vehicle to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, both subjects tied their victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both defendants were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department who observed inside the cab of their pickup a credit card and a pair of black patent leather shoes belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard. The subjects took the victim's credit card, wallet containing $20 in cash, his shoes and other items, and obtained the victim's address in order to later burglarize his home. I don't think that there was any person who was left in that courtroom who wasn't crying at the end of it. It lasted, 5 minutes, but it kept getting more and more horrific, ending with said defendant left the victim begging for his life.
These people are predators. I mean, this one journalist actually caught one of the judges like in the bathroom at the urinal and was like questioning him. And the judge was like, excuse me, can I have some privacy, please? And then the journalist got like offended that he asked for privacy. I mean, this is so not how journalism started.
I'll tell you what. When hard copy came and taped me, I taped them back at the exact same time. I have every word I ever said on tape.
You've got the beginning of the news story with the graphics in the background, murder in Wyoming, and Wyoming's dripping red like it's got blood on it or something like that. And it's like, what is this? This is sensationalism. And we're here going, wait a minute. We had the guys in jail in less than a day, and I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned, that we aren't a good community, and we are. A majority of people here are good people. You get bad apples once in a while, and I think that the gay community took this as an advantage, and they said, this is a good time for us to exploit this. Look, I do think that the media made people accountable. They made people think.
Matthew Shepard medical update at 3 p.m. Saturday, October 10th.
By this point, I looked out there where there had been 2 or 3 reporters. It must have been 10 or 15 still photographers and another 20 or 30 reporters and 10 video cameras. The parents had just arrived and I'd barely introduced myself to them. I looked out and I just thought, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition approximately 9:15 p.m. October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to just in front of the right ear. This has caused bleeding in the brain as well as pressure on the brain. There were also several lacerations on his face, head, and neck. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the last 24 hours, ranging from 98 to 106 degrees. We have had a difficulty controlling his temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. The following statement is a statement from them. First of all, we want to thank the American public for their kind thoughts about Matthew and their fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill, and we know that they are something Matthew would appreciate too. We also have a special request for the members of the media. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this time, and we ask that you respect our privacy as well as Matthew's so we can concentrate all of our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you very much.
Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to charges. Their girlfriends, Chastity Paisley and Kristen Price, also pled not guilty after being charged as accessories after the fact. Our next trip, we spoke to the chief investigating officer on the case, Detective Roberta Debris of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
I guess the thing that bothered me the most when I went down to Poudre Valley where Matthew was, and the thing that bothered me the most was seeing him, touching him. As a homicide detective, you look at bodies. This poor boy is sitting here fighting all his life trying to make it. I wanted it so by the books, you know?
I keep seeing that picture in my head of when I found it, and it's not pleasant whatsoever, and I don't want it to be there, and I just want to get it out. Because it's like so crazy to me, that I just happened to be the person to find him, because that's like the whole question, like with my religion is, why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, and I was irrationally terrified. So what that means is not letting my 12-year-old son walk the streets. Seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking it's coming after me, having to stop because I'm shaking so bad. And in fact, the pickup truck did not come after me, but my reaction was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I did have an opportunity. If I had amazing hindsight of 2020, just to have stopped what occurred. And I just keep thinking to myself, I should have noticed. Those guys shouldn't have been talking to Matthew. I shouldn't have had my head down washing those damn dishes for those 20 seconds. Just the things I could have done. God, what the hell was I thinking?
So you do a lot of studying, you spend hours and hours studying and studying, talking to the officers, making sure they understand, talking to your witnesses, and then always going back to, I see this flash of Matthew. I wanted it so tight that there was no way anyone was going to get out of this.
One of the things that happened when I got up to the fence was there was just such an overwhelming amount of blood, and we try to wear protective gloves, but we had a really cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us shit gloves, and you just keep putting them on, you put them on, you put them on, but they just keep breaking, and so finally you just run out of gloves, and so you think, don't hesitate. That's what your mind tells you all the time. Don't hesitate. So you keep moving and you try to find an airway and you try to help Matthew, and that's just what you do,
The thing I wasn't telling you before is that Reggie's my sister. And when she first told me that she wanted to be a police officer, well, I thought there was no better choice for her. She could handle whatever came her way.
Probably a day and a half later, their hospital called me and told me Matthew had HIV. And the doctor said, you've been exposed and you've had a bad exposure. You see, the thing is, I'd been building a lean-to for my llamas, and My hands had a bunch of open cuts on them, so I was kind of screwed. And so you think, oh shoot, you know?
Would you like to talk about losing sleep?
So I said to the doctor, okay, what do I do? And they said, get up here. So I got up there and we started the ATZ drugs immediately.
Now, they told me that that's a medication that if you administer it 36 hours after you've been exposed, it can maybe stop you getting the disease.
That is a mean, nasty medicine. Mean. I've lost 10 pounds and lots of my hair.
And quite frankly, I wanted to lash out at someone, but not at Matthew, okay? I need you to understand that. I would never lash out at Matthew. None of us were mad at Matthew. Maybe I wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off, and I thought about Henderson, you know? I just two absolute human beings who had so much grief for so many people. It's been terrible for my family, but mostly for her and her kids.
I think it brought home to my girls about what their mom really does for a living.
Well, Reggie, you know what I'm gonna tell you now.
And my sister told me, you know,
you're quitting this damn job.
And it's just a family thing, you know? They're terribly proud of you because you're doing such a good job, whether it's handling a drunk or handling a case like this. They just don't want to see you getting hurt.
Like I said, there's a right way, a wrong way, and then there's a Reggie way.
So I finally said, oh, for God's sakes, lighten up, Marge.
God, you are so stubborn!
They say that I'm stubborn, but I don't believe them. I think, okay, I've heard your opinion, and now here's mine.
I'm still learning about myself. And, you know, I don't feel like I know enough about certain things to make a decision that says homosexuality is right, when you've been raised your whole life that it's wrong. And right now, I would say that I don't agree with it. Yeah, that I don't agree with it. But maybe that's just because I couldn't do it. And speaking in religious terms, I don't think that's the way God intended it to happen. But I don't hate homosexuals, and I mean, I'm not going to persecute them or anything like that at all. I mean, that's not going to be getting in the way between me and the other person at all.
Yes, as a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety. I think we all were. And I think it's because somewhere inside we knew it could have been any of us. You don't show any type of physical affection or display any physical affection for your partner. You just don't do that here in Laramie.
Well, there's this whole idea. You leave me alone, I leave you alone. And it's even in some Western literature, you know, live and let live. That is such crap. I tell my friends that. Even my gay friends bring it up sometimes. I'm like, that is crap, you know? I mean, basically what it boils down to is, if I don't tell you I'm gay, you won't beat the crap out of me. I mean, what's so great about that? That's a great philosophy.
I was at the fireside one afternoon and I ran into a friend of Aaron McKinney's, Jen. You knew Aaron well, right?
Yeah, I did. And when I first found out about this, I thought it was just really, really awful. And I don't know whether Aaron was fucked up or whether he was coming down or what, but I mean, Matthew had money. Shit, he had better clothes than I did. Matthew was a little rich bitch. I shouldn't call him a rich bitch, though. That's not right. I'm not saying he's a bad guy either, because he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Probably said the wrong things. I don't know. I won't lie to you. There were times that I was all messed up on meth and I thought about going out and robbing. I mean, I never did. But yeah, it's there. It's easy money. And Aaron's done that kind of thing before. They've both done it. I know one night they went to Cheyenne to go do it and they came back with probably what, like $300? I don't know if they ever chose like gay people as their particular targets before, but just anyone that looked like they had a lot of money and that was, they could maybe outnumber or overpower. It was fair game to them.
Do you think there was any homophobia involved in it that could have contributed?
And probably would have pissed him off that Matthew was gay because he didn't like the gay people that I've seen him interact with. He was fine as long as they didn't hit on him, as long as it didn't come up. But yeah, I mean, as long as they weren't doing it in front of him.
Do you get the impression that he knew any other gay people?
I'm sure that he knew people that are gay. I mean, he worked up at KFC and there was a couple people up there that, yeah. I'm not saying that it's bad or anything because I don't know, half the people I know in Laramie are gay.
What would you say to Aaron if you saw him right now?
Well, first, I'd ask him if he'd do any more tweak. He wouldn't, I bet. If I saw Aaron now, I'd be like, man, why'd you fuck up like that? But I'd want to make sure he's doing good in there, but I'm sure he is. I probably just want to like hang out with him, smoke a bowl with him, but he wants one so bad.
You both went to Laramie High, right?
Yeah, can't you tell? I'm a product of our society.
This was homecoming weekend. There were a lot of people in town, and there was a homecoming parade that was scheduled. And then the students organized to tag on to the back of it, behind a banner supporting Matt, and everybody wearing these armbands that the students had created. So I live in the center of town, and my apartment has 2 windows facing 2 streets. One goes north, and one goes south, and that is exactly the homecoming parade route. Now, on the day of the parade, I had a cast on my leg because of a fall, so I was very disappointed because I really wanted to walk with the people that were marching for Matthew, but I couldn't. So I watched from my window, and it was just, I'm 52 years old. I've lived here for many years, and I've seen a lot. And I was very moved when I saw the banner at the end of the homecoming parade. About 100 people were walking behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. So then the parade goes down to the end of the street to make a U-turn, and I go to the other side of my apartment to wait for the parade to come down the street. Well, about 10 minutes go by, and sure enough, the parade starts coming down the street. But then I noticed the most incredible thing. The number of people walking for Matthew had grown about 5 times. There were at least 500 people marching for Matthew Shepard. 500 people. Can you imagine? The tag at the end was larger than the actual parade itself, and people kept joining in. And you know what? I started to cry. Tears were streaming down my face. And I thought to myself, thank God I got to see this in my lifetime. And my second thought, thank you, Matthew.
I haven't really been all that involved, per se. My husband, he's a highway patrolman. So that's really the only way I've kind of known about that. I mean, when I first found out, I just thought that it was horrible. I can't. Nobody deserves that. But the other thing that wasn't brought out at the same time that happened, another patrolman was killed. And there was nothing. Nothing. They didn't say anything about the old man that killed him. It was just a little piece in the paper. I mean, We lost one of our guys. My husband worked with him. This man was brand new on the force. But I mean, here's one of ours, and it's just a little piece in the paper. A lot of it is my feeling that the media is portraying Matthew Shepard as a saint and making him a martyr, and I don't think that he was. I don't think that he was that pure, okay? I didn't know him, but there's just so many things about him that I found out. It's just it's scary, about his character and how he was spreading AIDS and a few other things, and being the kind of person that he was. He was he was just a barfly, and I think he pushed himself around. I think he flaunted it. Everyone has problems. Why they exemplified him, I don't know. What's the difference if you're gay? A hate crime is a hate crime. If you murder somebody, you hate them. It has nothing to do with if you're a gay or a sex worker or whatever. I don't understand. I just don't understand.
Whenever you are ready. Oh, sorry. Whenever you are ready.
This was one of the last days on our trip to Laramie. Greg and I had been conducting interviews nonstop, and we are exhausted.
We are to meet Father Roger at 7:30 in the morning. I was wishing we could skip it altogether, but we have to follow through to the end. So here we go. 7:30 a.m. 2 queers and a Catholic priest.
Matthew Shepard has served us well. Do you realize that? He has served us well. And I do not mean to condemn Matthew to perfection, but I cannot mention anyone who has done more for this community than Matthew Shepard. And I'm not going to sit here and say, I was just this bold guy, no fear. I was scared. I was very vocal in this community when this happened. And I thought, should we call the bishop and ask him permission to do the vigil? And I was like, hell no, I'm not going to do that. His permission doesn't make it correct. You realize that? And I'm not knocking bishops, but what is correct is correct. You people are just out here on a search, though. I will do this. I will trust you people that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. Say it correct. I think you have a responsibility to do that. Don't make matters worse. You think violence is what they did to Matthew. Well, they did do violence to Matthew, but every time that you are called gay or you are called, whatever.
Or a lesbian?
Yeah, yes, that. Do you realize that is violence? That is the seed of violence. And I would resent it immensely if you use anything I said, to somehow cultivate that kind of violence, even in its smallest form. I would resent it immensely. You need to know that.
Thank you, Father, for saying that.
Just deal with what is true. You know what is true. You need to do your best to say it correct.
Reverend?
Yes, hello.
I believe your wife told you a little bit of why I'm contacting you.
Yes, she did. And to tell you, I don't know that I really want to talk to anyone about any of this incident. I'm somewhat involved, and I just don't think...
Yes, I understand, and I don't blame you. I went to your church on Sunday.
You went to the services on Sunday?
Yes, I did.
On Sunday.
Yes, this past Sunday.
Did I meet you?
Yes, you welcomed me in, I believe.
I see. Well, let me tell you, I'm not afraid to be controversial or to speak my mind, and that is not necessarily the views of my congregation per se. Now, as I said, I am somewhat involved. That is, the people in the case, or, well, the girlfriend of the accused is a member of our congregation, and one of the accused has visited.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those two people, the accused and oh shoot. Darn. I was on a good streak.
Just let's go back to which line was that? Now, as for the victim, is that where you were?
No, we were at
now those two
people, the accused.
Great. Okay, so just for fun, go from, well, the girlfriend of the accused is a member of our congregation and one of the accused has visited.
Okay. Well, the girlfriend of the accused is a member of our congregation, and one of the accused has visited.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those people, the accused, have forfeited their lives. We've been after the two I've mentioned for ages, trying to get them to live right, to do right. Now, one boy is on suicide watch, and I am working with him until they put him in the chair and turn on the juice. I will work for his salvation. Now, I think they deserve the death penalty, and I will try to deal with them spiritually.
Right, I understand.
Now, as for the victim, I know that that lifestyle is legal, but I will tell you one thing. I hope that Matthew Shepard, as he was tied to that fence, that he had time to reflect on a moment when someone had spoken the word of the Lord to him, and that before he slipped into a coma, he had a chance to reflect on his lifestyle.
Thank you so much, Reverend. I appreciate you speaking with me.
At about 11:30 that night, I had barely gone to bed, and Margot, our chief operating officer, called and said his blood pressure has started to drop. Well, let's wait and see. She called me about 10 after. He just died. So I quick got dressed and came in, and went to the ICU where the family was, and Judy came up to me and she put her arms around me, and I put my arms around her, and we just stood there, honestly, for about 10 minutes, just, so what else can you do? And then we had to sit and talk about things that you just, Dennis, it's now public knowledge, and I'm gonna go out there now and tell the whole world that this happened. Because by this point, it was clear to us that the world, it was the whole world. And so Judy told me what she wanted me to say, and I went out at 4 a.m. At 12 midnight on Monday, October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified his family, who were already at the hospital. At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside, and the family did release the following statement. The family again asked me to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for the overwhelming response for their son. The family was grateful that they did not have to make a decision regarding whether or not to continue life support for their son. Like a good son, he was caring to the end and removed guilt or stress from the family. He came into the world premature and left the world premature. Matthew's mother said, "Go home. Give your kids a hug and don't let a day go by without telling them that you love them." And I don't know how I let this happen. I lost it on national television, but we had been like up 72 hours and I'd gone home and gone to sleep for half an hour to get up and come back in, and maybe I was just I don't know. In a moment of complete brain deadness, while I was out there reading this statement, I thought of my own 4 daughters. And go home and hug your kids. And oh, she doesn't have her kid anymore. And there I am thinking, this is so lame. We started to get people sending us emails and letters, and most of them were generally very kind. But I did get this one. This guy wrote me and said, "Do you cry like a baby on TV for all your patients, or just the..." And I told you before, homosexuality is not a lifestyle in which many agree with. But having been thrown into this, I guess I didn't understand the magnitude in which some people hate. And all of the letters we got, there were maybe 2 or 3 that were like that. Most of them were thank you for caring and compassion, and Matthew had a caring and compassion from the moment he got there.
I spoke with Doc today and told him we would be coming back out soon for the upcoming trials of Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. And this is what he had to say.
I'll tell you what, if they put those 2 boys to death, that would defeat everything Matt would be thinking about on them, because Matt would not want those 2 boys to die. He'd want to leave them with hope. HOPE, just like the whole world hoped Matt would survive. You see, the whole thing ropes around hope. HOPE.
The day of the funeral, it was snowing really bad, just big, huge, wet snowflakes. And when I got there were thousands of people just in black with so many umbrellas. And there were 2 churches, one for people who were invited or immediate family, that sort of thing, and the other for everyone else. And still, there were just hundreds of people outside the church who couldn't fit in. And there was this big park by the church, and that's where all these people were. And the park was just so full.
And I guess it was like the worst storm they'd ever had, like that anybody could tell. I mean, there were trees falling down, the power was going out for a couple days because of it. And I just thought, well, it's like the forces of universe at work, you know? Whatever higher spirit there is that blows storms was blowing a storm.
My most striking memory from the funeral is seeing the Reverend Fred Phelps from Kansas. That scene go up in the park.
Do you believe the Bible? Do you believe that we should separate the precious from the vile? You don't believe that part of the Bible. You stand there, ignorant of the fact that for every 2 times it talks about God's love in the Bible, it talks about God's hate.
A bunch of high school kids who got out early came over and started yelling at some of the people in the protest, the Fred Phelps people. And across the street, I remember this skinhead coming over, and he was dressed in leather and spikes everywhere, and he came over from across the street where the protest was, and he came into the crowd, and I just thought, oh, this is gonna be a real ugly confrontation. But instead, he started leading them in amazing grace.
We wouldn't be here if this was just another murder the state was going to deal with. The state deals with hundreds of murders every single day. This murder is different because the fags are bringing us out here trying to make Matthew Shepard look like a poster boy for the gay lifestyle. And we're going to answer it. It's just that simple. You don't like that attribute of God? That perfect attribute of God? We love that attribute of God because we're going to preach it. God's hatred is pure. It's a determination. It's a determination that he's going to send some people to hell. That's God's hatred. We're standing here with God's message. We're standing here with God's message. Is homosexuality? No. Is being a fag okay? What do you mean it's not for you to judge? If God doesn't hate fags, why does he put them in hell?
After seeing Fred Phelps protesting at Matthew's funeral and finding out that he was coming to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, I realized that someone needs to stand toe-to-toe with this guy to show the differences. And I think that when we're talking about hatred as much as the whole country is right now, that someone needs to show that there's a better way of dealing with this kind of hatred. So, our idea is to dress up like angels, for we have designed this angel outfit. And the wings are huge. They're like big ass wings. And what we're gonna do is there's gonna be 10 to 20 of us that are dressed up as angels. And since our wings are so huge, we are going to completely block him. So we get there. We don't say a fucking word. We just stand there. And we are a group of people bringing forth a message of peace and love and compassion. And we're calling it Angel Action. Yeah. This 21-year-old little lesbian is ready to stand in line.
You see, the barrenness and sterility of your silly arguments set over some solid gospel truth. Barren and sterile, like your lifestyle. Silly arguments.
And I knew that my angels were going to be taking the head of all of the shouts and everything. So, I mean, we were going to be blocking his view, and he was going to be pissed off to all hell. So, I went out and I bought my angels earplugs. As soon as they started jury selection, you know, everyone was coming into my shop with, I don't want to be on trial. I hope they don't choose me. Or, oh my God, I've been chosen. How do I get out of it? just wanting to get away from the situation as fast as possible. Very fearful of having to be a part of that jury. And then I heard Henderson had to sit in the courtroom while they questioned the prospective jurors. And one of the questions they ask them is, would you be willing to put this person to death? And I understand a lot of the responses were, yes, I would. Can you imagine hearing that? Juror after juror after juror.
You entered a not guilty plea earlier, Mr. Henderson, but I understand you wish to change your plea today. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You understand, Mr. Henderson, that the recommended sentence here is 2 life sentences.
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that those may run concurrently or they may run consecutively?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Henderson, I will now ask you how you wish to plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Before the court decides whether the sentences will be concurrent or consecutive, I understand there are some statements to be made by at least one individual.
As the grandmother and the person who raised Russell, along with my family, we have written the following statement. Our hearts ache for the pain and suffering that the shepherds have went through. We have prayed for your family every night since the beginning. Many times throughout the day, I have thought about Matt. And you will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers. As we know that your pain will never go away, you have showed us such mercy by allowing us to have this plea. And we are so grateful that you are giving us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, we as a family hope that as you sentence Russell, that you will do it concurrently, 2 life terms. For the Russell we know and love, we humbly plead, Your Honor, to not take Russell completely out of our lives.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you have a constitutional right to make a statement if you would like to. Do you have anything you would like to say?
Yes, I would, Your Honor. Mr. and Mrs. Shepherd, there's not a moment that goes by that I don't see what happened that night. I know what I did was very wrong, and I regret it greatly. You have my greatest sympathy for what happened. I hope that one day you'll be able to find it in your hearts to forgive me. Your Honor, I know what I did was very wrong, and I'm very sorry for what I did, and I'm ready to pay my debt for what I did.
Mr. Henderson, you drove the vehicle that took Matthew Shepherd to his death. You bound him to that fence in order that he might be more savagely beaten and in order that he might not escape to tell his tale. You left him out there for 18 hours, knowing full well that he was there, perhaps having an opportunity to save his life, and you did nothing. Mr. Henderson, this court does not believe that you really feel any true remorse for your part in this action. And I wonder whether you fully realize the gravity of the situation you're in. The court finds it appropriate, therefore, that the sentence is ordered as follows. As to court count number 3, that the felony murder with robbery, you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. On the count of kidnapping, that you serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. Sentencing for count 1 to run consecutive to sentencing for count 3.
Before we left Laramie, we met again with Rebecca Hilliker at the theater department. She is producing Angels in America this year at the university.
I think that's the focus the university has taken, is that we have a lot of work to do, that we have an obligation to find new ways to reach our students. And the question is, how do we move? How do we reach a whole state where there's some serious deep-seated hostility towards gays? How do you reach them? This is just the beginning, and guess who's auditioning?
My parents were like, so what plays are you doing this year at school? And I was like, Angels in America. And I told them the whole list of plays. And they're like, Angels in America? Is that play you did in high school? That scene you did in high school? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, huh, so are you gonna audition for it? And I was like, yeah. And we got in this huge argument. And the best thing that I knew that I had on them, it was that just after they'd seen me in a performance of Macbeth, and on stage, like, I murdered a little kid and Lady Macduff and these two other guys. And like, she goes, well, you know, homosexuality is a sin. She just kept saying that. And I go, Mom, I just played a murderer tonight, and you didn't seem to have a problem with that. I tell you, I've never prepared this much for an audition in my life. Never, ever. Not even close.
Well, once we started working into the case and understanding their underlying fears, it sort of hit close to home. This is America. No one has the right to live in that fear. And to be honest, we're probably gonna have the same people who hold the same old ideals. And I was probably one of them 14 months ago. But I'm not gonna stand by it, and I'm not going to listen to it. If they don't like my view on it, fine. The door goes both ways. I've already lost a couple of buddies. I don't care. At least I can go to bed comfortable and sleeping at night.
Well, you're tested every 3 months, and I was able to have my DNA test done. So they got me up to Fort Collins, drew my blood, and flew it up to Michigan. And they did all the DNA work there, and which was a week later, I knew I was negative for good.
I'll tell you, we were all on our knees saying Hail Marys.
We were just so elated, you know, and you think, thank God.
And what's the first thing she does?
I plan a big old kiss on my husband's mouth. And I was just so happy, you know. You're just so happy. And you think, yeah, I hope I did this service well. I hope I did it with some kind of integrity. And so you're just really happy. And my daughters, they just bawled.
They were so happy.
And the force.
Oh boy.
We went out and got
shit-faced.
They all bought me drinks too. It was great. Everybody hugged and cried. And you know, I kissed everybody who walked through that door.
Reggie, they don't need to know that.
I didn't care if they were male or female. They each got a kiss on the lips.
Now, what a part of what I just said did you not understand?
Oh, get over it, Marge.
Nicely.
Part of me wants McKinney to get it. And I'm not very proud of that. You know, I was on and off and on. I can't say what I would do. Yeah, I'm too personally involved.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100%, you know, because I want to make sure that guy's ass dies. This is one instance where I truly believe an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
I don't know about the death penalty, but I don't ever want to see them ever walk out of Rollins Penitentiary ever again. I'll pay my nickel or whatever. I'll pay my low percentage of tax, a nickel a day, just to make sure that his ass stays in there and never sees society and definitely never comes back in my bar. I just don't really believe in the death penalty. It's just too much for me. I don't believe that one person should be killed as redemption for having killed another. It's just two wrongs don't make a right.
How can I protest if the Shepherds want McKinney dead? I just can't interfere in that. But on a personal level, I knew Aaron in grade school. We never called him Aaron. He was called AJ. How can we put AJ McKinney to death?
I think right now our most important teachers must be Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. They have to be our teachers because how did you learn? What did we do as a society to teach you that? See, I don't know if many people will let them be their teachers. I think it would be wonderful if the judge said, in addition to your sentence, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
Excellent. Thank you. During the trial of Aaron McKinney, the prosecution played a taped recording of his confession. The following is an excerpt of that confession.
Okay, so you guys, you and Russ, you go to the fireside by yourselves, right?
Yeah.
Okay, where do you go after you leave the fireside?
Some kid wanted to ride home.
What's he look like?
Like a queer. Such a queer dude.
He looks like a queer.
Yeah, like he's gay, you know?
Okay, how did you meet him?
He wanted to ride home, and I just thought, well, the dude's drunk. Let's just take him home.
When did you and Russ talk about jacking him up?
We kind of talked about it at the bar.
Okay, what happened next?
We drove him out past Walmart. We get over there, and he starts grabbing my leg and grabbing my genitals. I was like, look, I'm not fucking gay. If you touch me again, you're gonna get it. And I don't know what the hell he was trying to do, but I beat him up pretty bad. I think I killed him.
What you beat him up with?
Oh, blacked out. My fist, my pistol, the butt of the gun. Wondering what happened to me. I had a few beers, and I don't know. It was like I could see what was going on, but I don't know. It was like somebody else was doing it.
What was the first thing that he did or said that made you want to beat him up?
Well, he put his hand on my leg. Slid his hand as if he was going to grab my balls.
Did he ever try to defend himself against you or hit you back?
Yeah, sort of. He tried his little swings or whatever, but he wasn't very effective.
Okay. How many times did you hit him inside the truck before you guys stopped where you left him?
I'd say I hit him 2 or 3 times. Probably 3 times with my fists and about 6 times with my pistol.
Did he ask you to stop?
Well, yeah, he was getting the shit kicked out of him.
What'd he say?
After he asked me to stop, most all he was doing was screaming.
So Russ kind of dragged him over the fence, I'm assuming, and tied him up?
Yeah, something like that. I just remember Russ was laughing at first, and then he got pretty scared.
Was Matthew conscious when Russ tied him up?
Yeah, I told him to turn around and don't look at my license plate number because I was scared he would tell the police. And then I asked him what my license plate said. He read it, and that's why I hit him a few more times.
Just to be sure. So obviously you don't like gay people?
No, I don't.
Would you say you hate them?
I really don't hate them, but when they start coming on to me and stuff like that, I get pretty aggravated.
Did he threaten you?
This gay dude?
Yeah.
Not really.
Can you answer me one thing? Why do you guys take his shoes?
I don't know. Now I'll never get to see my son again!
I don't know. You'll probably go to court sometime today.
Well, today. So I'm just gonna go in there and plead guilty. Not guilty. Today.
No. You're just going to be arraigned today.
He's gonna die? For sure.
There's no doubt that Mr. Shepard is going to die.
So, what are they going to give me? 25 to life? Or just the death penalty? Get it over with.
That's not our job. That's the judge's job and the jury.
My son Matthew did not look like a winner. In fact, he was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died. However, in his all too brief life, he proved that he was a winner. On October 6th, 1998, my firstborn son tried to show the world that he could win again. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and hero lost. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero died, 50 days before his 22nd birthday. I keep wondering the same thing I did as when I first saw him in the hospital. What could he have become? How could he have changed his little piece of the world to make it better? Matt officially died in the hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. He actually died on the outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. You, Mr. McKinney, with your friend Mr. Henderson, left him out there, but he wasn't alone. He had lifelong friends with him, friends he had grown up with. You're probably wondering who those friends were. First, he had the beautiful night sky and the same stars and moon that we used to look at through a telescope. He had the daylight and the sun to shine on him, and through it all, he was breathing in the scent of pine trees from the snowy range. He heard the wind, the ever-present Wyoming wind, for the last time. He had one more friend with him that night. He had God. And I feel better knowing that he wasn't alone. Matthew's beating, hospitalization, and funeral focused worldwide attention on hate. Good is coming out of evil, and people have said, enough is enough. I miss my son, but I am proud to be able to say that he is my son. My husband Dennis has been quoted as being against the death penalty. It has been stated that Matt was also against the death penalty. Both of these statements are wrong. Matt believed that there were crimes and instances that justified the death penalty, and I too believe in the death penalty. I would like nothing more than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However, it is time to begin the healing process, to show mercy to someone who refused to show any mercy. Mr. McKinney, I am going to grant you life, as hard as it is for me to do so, because of Matthew. Every time you celebrate Christmas, a birthday, the 4th of July, remember that Matthew isn't. Every time you wake up in your prison cell, remember that you had the opportunity and the ability to change your actions that night. You robbed me of something very precious, and I will never forgive you for that. Mr. McKinney, I am going to grant you life in the memory of someone who no longer lives. May you live a long life, and may you thank Matthew every day for it.
Me and Debris hugged and cried, and everyone had tears in their eyes, and you're just so thankful, and Mr. Shepherd was crying, and that got me bawling, and everyone just...
This is all we've lived and breathed for a year daily. This has been my case daily, and now it's over.
Maybe now we can go on and quit being stuck,
It just hit me today, the moment I walked out of the courtroom, that the reason God wanted me to find Matthew was so that he didn't have to die out there alone, because if I hadn't had come along, they wouldn't have found him for 2 weeks at least. And it makes me feel really good knowing that he didn't have to die out there alone.
And I'm just glad it's over. I really am. Testifying in that trial was one of the hardest things I've ever done.
On our last trip, I had the good fortune of seeing Zubaida Ullah play Hope Pitt in Angels of America. After the performance, we spoke.
I didn't for the longest time let myself become personally involved in the Matthew Shepard thing. It didn't seem real. It just seemed way blown out of proportion. Matthew Shepard was just a name instead of an individual. I don't know. It's weird. It's so weird, man. I just feel bad for all that stuff I told you, for the person I used to be. That's why I want to hear those interviews from last year when I said all that stuff. I don't know. I just can't believe I ever said that stuff about homosexuals, you know? How did I ever let that stuff make me think that you were different from me?
Well, a year ago, I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal. And now it's obviously changed in the fact that I've really realized my role in taking my part. So now, instead of going to school for music, I've decided to go to school for communications and political science. Because I have a career in political science. Actually, I recently have been honored in Washington, D.C. by the Anti-Defamation League. And whenever I think of any of the speaking or the Angels in America that I've done, you know, Matthew gave me. Matthew's like guiding this little path for me to walk down with his light. And whenever I get to a door, he opens it and he says, okay, next step. And if I get to be a rock star on the side, okay.
Change is not an easy thing. And I don't think people were up to it here. They got what they wanted. Those two boys got what they deserved. We look good now. Justice has been served. The OK Corral. We shot down the villains. We sent the prostitutes on the train. The town's cleaned up. And we don't need to talk about it anymore. You know, it's been a year since Matthew Shepard died, and they haven't passed shit in Wyoming. At a state level, any town, nobody anywhere has passed any kind of laws, anti-discrimination laws, or hate crime legislation. Nobody has passed anywhere. What's come of it? What's come out of this that's concrete or lasting?
I've been up to that site in my limousine, okay? And I remember to myself, the night he and I drove around together, he said to me, Laramie sparkles, doesn't it? And from where he was, up there, if you sit exactly where he was, up there, Laramie sparkles from there with a low-lying cloud. It's the blue lights that's bouncing off the clouds from the airports, and it goes right over the whole city. I mean, it blows you away. Matt was right there in that spot. And I can just picture in his eyes, I can just picture what he was seeing. The last thing he saw on this earth was the sparkling lights.
We spent the last 2 days packing a year's worth of materials and saying our goodbyes. We've been here 6 times and conducted over 200 interviews. Zubaida cried when she said goodbye.
Marge wished us luck. When we asked her how Laramie would feel seeing a play about itself, she said,
I think we'd enjoy it. I mean, so it's not the hellhole of Earth would be nice. You know, that's up to how you portray us, and in turn, how Laramie behaves.
As we were getting off the phone, she said to me,
You take care now. I love you, honey.
Doc asked me if I would like to ghostwrite a book about the whole event. Galloway offered me, or anyone else, a place to stay if we and when we come back to Laramie. He also seemed interested as to whether there'd be any open auditions for the play.
We left Laramie about 7 in the evening. On the way to Denver, I looked in my rear view mirror to take one last look at the town.
And I will speak with you I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. You need to do your best to say it correct.
And in the distance, I could see the sparkling lights of Laramie, Wyoming.